Imagine finally understanding why you've always felt disconnected, misunderstood, and strangely alone, even when surrounded by people. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why your intelligence has become a source of isolation, exhaustion, and frustration. More importantly, you'll discover how to embrace your unique gifts without sacrificing your mental health, relationships, or happiness. Maybe you think this isn't for you. That intelligence could never be a burden, or perhaps you've convinced yourself that you're just being overly sensitive. But deep down, you know something isn't right. You've felt the frustration of conversations moving too slow, the burnout from constantly adapting to others, and the loneliness of seeing patterns and truths that no one else acknowledges. In the next few minutes, we're diving deep into the hidden reality of highly intelligent people, the things nobody else talks about. No sugarcoating, no cliches, just raw, authentic truths about why thinking fast, feeling deeply, and seeing clearly can sometimes feel like a curse. Why watch this now? Because each day you wait, you're losing another piece of your true self. Every moment spent suppressing your intelligence, compromising your authenticity, and ignoring your insights pushes you closer to a life of quiet desperation. It's time to reclaim your mind, reconnect with your real voice, and live with purpose, not apology. This isn't just another feel-good video. It's a wake-up call, an invitation to step away from the mediocrity and reclaim the intellectual and emotional freedom you deserve. Ready to find your tribe, unleash your mind, and finally live authentically? Then stay with me, like, subscribe, and let's dive into the truth that sets you free. You're in a room full of people. There's laughter, conversation, connection, or at least the appearance of it, but inside you feel like you're living behind a glass wall. You hear the words, but you already know where every sentence is going. You predict the punchlines, the small talk, the rehearsed opinions. It's not arrogance, it's speed. While they're processing the surface, you've already dissected the implications, the contradictions, the blind spots. This isn't just social isolation, it's intellectual exile. Like being stuck in a play where everyone else is reading from a script you've already memorized, twice. Highly intelligent people don't just think fast, they feel fast. Emotions, consequences, motivations. They unravel these in seconds. And while the world moves in predictable loops, they spiral through layers of nuance. This creates a constant tension, either slow yourself down or alienate everyone around you. So they choose to shrink, to compress their thoughts into simpler words, more digestible doses. But inside, they're starving for depth. That's the real intellectual hunger, not for facts or trivia, but for someone who can keep up, someone who won't need them to dilute everything they say. And then there's the exhaustion, not physical, existential. Every social interaction becomes a performance. You monitor your tone so you don't sound condescending. You downplay your ideas so they don't seem threatening. You bite your tongue while people arrive at insights you considered 5 minutes ago. This is performance fatigue, not because you're acting fake, but because you're always restraining the most honest version of yourself. Imagine a race car stuck in a school zone. That's your mind, constantly braking to match the world's pace. Even in work settings, the mismatch burns you out. In meetings, you already see the flaws in the proposal, the solution, and the timeline. But speaking up too early makes others uncomfortable. So you wait, you nod, you play the game. You let others discover the right answers at their own speed. Meanwhile, a part of you slowly dies. The part that craves velocity, sharpness, real-time insight. You weren't built for waiting. But intelligence, in today's world, demands patience that borders on self-betrayal. This isn't just about intellect. It's about emotional imbalance too. Because when you're constantly the one adapting, slowing down, making others comfortable, you start to erode. You suppress your curiosity. You silence your enthusiasm. You filter your language, not because you want to, but because you've learned the cost of being too much too soon. The irony? You do all this to maintain connection, but it only deepens your sense of disconnection. The more you adapt, the less seen you feel. And when you finally get home, when the mask drops and the lights go out, what's left? A mind still racing, but no one to run with. You replay conversations that felt like walking through molasses. You think of what you wanted to say, but didn't. You feel the weight of brilliance unspoken. This is the dark undercurrent of fast thinking. The world doesn't just move slowly. It punishes those who move quickly. Not with violence, but with boredom, with loneliness, with that gnawing sense that maybe you should just stop talking altogether. But you don't, because deep down you still hope there's someone out there who thinks like you, someone who won't be intimidated by your speed, but inspired by it. Someone who can go head to head with your thoughts and not drown. That hope is what keeps you going. But let's be honest, it's also what keeps you suffering, because most days, the silence echoes louder than any connection you've found. And the thought grows louder. Maybe I was never meant to belong. So you isolate, not to escape people, but to protect the last pieces of yourself you haven't compromised. You retreat, not from the world, but from the need to explain yourself every second. In that solitude, you rediscover your real voice, your uncensored mind, your authentic rhythm. But even there, a question lingers. How long can I go without being fully seen, before I disappear entirely? There's a curse that comes with seeing too clearly. It's not about knowing more facts, it's about feeling more contradictions. A highly intelligent person walks through life with a kind of moral clarity that others mistake for cynicism. While most people compartmentalize, rationalize, or simply don't care, the thinker sees every inconsistency glowing like a neon sign. A boss who preaches mental health while glorifying burnout. A government that speaks of justice while feeding inequality. A friend who talks of loyalty but disappears when it counts. The world is full of these fractures, and if you see too many of them, you begin to feel like you're walking on a cracked mirror, one step away from collapse. It's not that intelligent people want to be negative, it's that they recognize patterns, and most of those patterns are disturbing. They see how history repeats with different costumes, but the same script. How cycles of power, oppression, distraction, and denial run like clockwork across generations. And once you've seen the machinery behind the curtain, it becomes almost impossible to take the performance seriously. You can't unknow the truth. And truth in this case becomes a heavy chain, pulling you further away from the comfortable illusions everyone else gets to live inside. And what happens when you try to speak about it? You're shut down, labeled too intense, too negative, too serious. So you start censoring yourself. You nod when people repeat simplistic ideas. You smile at shallow optimism because you know that speaking the truth would just make things worse. That's the unbearable tension, knowing the truth but having to swallow it over and over. Eventually, that swallowing turns into self-erasure. You stop offering your insight. You start letting people live their delusions. But inside, it's rotting you, slowly. The worst part? Your intellectual hunger doesn't go away. You still crave deep conversations. Not debates, but dialogues, explorations, shared insight. But all around you, it's just noise. Politics reduced to slogans, relationships reduced to checklists, philosophy reduced to Instagram quotes. You're starving in a world full of fast food minds. And you begin to wonder if you're broken for wanting more, when in truth, you're just awake in a society that's chosen to stay asleep. And this hunger isn't just mental, it's spiritual. You long for meaning, not just information. For questions that don't have answers, for complexity that doesn't fit neatly into categories. But these are not things you can bring up at a lunch break. You can't talk about death, purpose, or existential collapse while your co-workers gossip about weekend plans. So you shrink, you nod, you play the part. But inside, a sacred part of you starts to dim. Then comes the authenticity crisis. When every version of yourself has been shaped by context, convenience, or survival, who's the real you? The version you show your partner, your team, your parents, or the one who only comes out in silence at night when no one is watching? The problem isn't that you're fake, it's that you're fragmented, and intelligence accelerates that fragmentation because it allows you to simulate the ideal self in every situation. But deep down, you miss the messy, unfiltered version, the version that doesn't have to explain itself or hold back. Relationships become a battlefield of masks. You can feel when someone's enthusiasm is forced, when their kindness is transactional, when their vulnerability is rehearsed. And once you see through the mask, it's hard to engage with it. You yearn for rawness, for flawed honesty, for awkward truth. But most people don't want to go there. They don't want to be seen. They want to be liked. And so, you drift again. Surrounded but untouched. Invited but unseen. This is how the invisible chains tighten. Not through rejection, but through disconnection. Not through silence, but through meaningless noise. You carry the burden of awareness in a world built on avoidance. And yet you keep going. Not because it's easy, but because somewhere inside you believe that being real, even if it hurts, is still better than being blind. And that belief, that's your rebellion. To be highly intelligent is often to be early. You see the cracks in systems before they collapse. You sense when a company is dying before the layoffs. You understand the environmental cost before the climate disaster. You can trace the logical conclusion of a policy before it becomes law. But this foresight rarely brings admiration. More often, it brings dismissal, eye rolls, or resistance. The curse of seeing ahead is that you become a warning sign in a world that doesn't want to look. This is future shock. Not because the future is surprising, but because no one else seems to care until it's too late. It's even worse when you propose solutions. You outline the problem. You offer the fix. You've done the math, run the models, prepared the arguments, but instead of gratitude, you're met with silence, or worse, with bureaucracy. Your ideas are buried under red tape, filtered through people who don't understand them, and finally rejected with a shrug. That's not how we do things. This is the tragedy of innovation resistance. Incompetence is rewarded for being predictable, while brilliance is sidelined for being disruptive. At work, in institutions, in families, you watch the same cycle repeat. Broken systems clinging to survival, defended by people who confuse consistency with competence. The ones in charge are often not the most insightful, but the most compliant. And if you challenge them, you become a threat, not because you're wrong, but because you're right too soon. So you start to pull back. You stop offering solutions, not because you don't care, but because caring has consequences. And this leads to a new kind of guilt, the guilt of not doing more. You feel the weight of responsibility pressing on your back. You know you could help, fix, solve, rebuild. But where do you even begin? The system is massive, the rot is deep, and you are one person. One tired, underappreciated, overthinking person, so you freeze. You enter decision paralysis. Every choice feels like a betrayal of the 1,000 other things you're not doing. And even when you're giving more than most, it never feels like enough. Meanwhile, the world moves forward without your input. Or worse, with the input of those less qualified, less thoughtful, less ethical. You watch as society hands the microphone to the loudest, not the wisest. You see schools prioritize test scores over curiosity. Politics reward slogans over solutions. Businesses chase profits over sustainability. This is not just frustrating, it's a full-blown cognitive recession. A slow decay of public discourse led by people who have mistaken noise for intelligence. And then comes the excellence isolation. The better you are at what you do, the harder it is to find peers. You try to collaborate, but your standards become a problem. You want to brainstorm, but no one can keep up. You long to build something great, but the people around you are satisfied with good enough. So you stand at the top of your own hill, accomplished, but alone. And that loneliness cuts deeper than failure ever could. Eventually, you start to question whether it's even worth it. What's the point of being smart if the world isn't listening? What's the point of seeing ahead if no one believes you? The recognition paradox hits hard here. You are praised for your talents, but punished for expressing them. Valued for results, but resented for your mind. So you hide again, not to protect your ego, but to protect your spirit. Because showing your full capacity has a cost, and you're tired of paying it. But even in that retreat, a fire still burns. You still believe that intelligence matters, that vision matters, that truth, even when ignored, has a force of its own. Maybe the world won't change tomorrow, maybe your insights won't be welcomed today, but you refuse to become numb. You refuse to dumb yourself down to fit in, because somewhere deep inside there's a part of you that knows the only thing worse than being ignored is becoming like the ones who ignored you. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to question, to notice, to push the boundaries of what others call normal. But that path, the path of intelligence, clarity, and emotional depth, isn't easy. It isolates you. It drains you. It forces you to choose between authenticity and acceptance, between truth and comfort. And for too long, you've been choosing survival over expression, silence over insight, adaptation over authenticity. But here's the truth. The world needs your mind exactly as it is. Not filtered, not softened, not hidden. Your ability to see what others can't, to feel what others avoid, to think beyond the surface, that is not a flaw, that is a gift. And yes, it comes with a cost. But so does denying it. So does living a life that isn't fully yours. What if, instead of dimming your light to fit in, you started building a life where your light becomes the standard? What if you surrounded yourself with people who get it, who don't need you to explain, slow down, or pretend? What if you stopped apologizing for being more than most can handle? You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need validation from people who were never built to understand you. All you need is courage, the courage to live as yourself even when the world doesn't reward it, especially when it doesn't. So here's your invitation. Start today. Speak the truth you've been holding back. Seek out minds that challenge you, not comfort you. Create spaces where you can finally breathe. And before you go, answer this in the comments. What's the one part of yourself you've been hiding just to make others comfortable? Don't just watch, reflect, share, reclaim. And if this spoke to you, subscribe and turn on notifications because this is just the beginning.